Football League Chairman Greg Clarke says football must create a more supportive environment for black players. Clarke was speaking to Sky Sports News following the broadcast from the special report team, which uncovered several incidents of racist chanting at football matches. The report was inspired by Marvin Sordell, the Bolton striker, who said he was called a slave by Millwall fans last year and is one of the few footballers to speak out about his experiences. And Clarke believes the reluctance of many black footballers to report incidents of racism highlights a deeper problem within the sport. He said, "I was grateful to Sky for shedding some light on a very dark area in football. Anybody who's been associated with football for years knows that things are getting better, but they are nowhere near where they need to be. To have our players subject to vile and filthy abuse deserves nothing better than the culprits being arrested and charged with the full weight of the law. We obviously have to stamp out racism. No right-thinking person could in any way condone the sort of terrible behaviour we saw on your programme, Sky Sports programme. But what chilled me even more was not the racism, but the reticence of black players to feel comfortable in reporting it. So we've got to wrap ourselves around black players, give them support to be able to report such episodes, and then deal with such episodes extremely severely." Professor Gus John accuses the government of taking a back seat in the racism battle. Also from February 12th, 2013, race relations advisor Professor Gus John says the government should take the lead in attempts to eradicate racism from football. As said, Sky Sports News sent their special report team to a number of football grounds around the country where several incidents of vile chanting were recorded. The worst of those incidents was at the Den, Millwall's ground, where Leeds striker El Hadji was subjected to 56 separate incidents of abuse. Professor John commended Sky Sports News for uncovering the footage, but said the onus was on individual clubs to monitor what went on in their stadium. And John insists that a strong message from the government would help give clubs power and inclination needed to police their grounds. "It is shocking for a number of reasons," said John. "Firstly, the fact that individuals consider it okay for them to conduct themselves in that abusive manner, and the fact that in one match, one player could be abused 56 times without anyone intervening." The Millwall representative said that the footage will be passed to the police, but it shouldn't take Sky Sports News to identify for them what is going on in their grounds. Given the history of racism in football, and at Millwall in particular, it is essential that the club itself puts in place mechanisms whereby such individuals could be identified, taken to police, and appropriate action should follow. In other words, given the number of black players that are in the game in this country, it is really quite unacceptable that any player should expect to be treated in those ways on any football pitch in the UK. I do not believe that the PFA, FIFA, or anybody else has done enough to eradicate racism from the game. John also said the government should be more directly involved in helping combat racism in football, especially given the tax revenues raised by the sport. Some people really put their foot in their mouths and are real idiots. Blatter, Platini, Scudamore, among others, that I've said with my blog, The Moronic Trinity. But it's a case of victims of racism needing support. Greg Clarke, I agree with what he said. And Gus John, I agree with what he's saying as well, in terms of the government needing to take a front kind of role. But you know what? I don't think it should be just black players to get support or help, because at the end of the day, racism is not just towards black players. There are Asian players in the game, whether it be of Indian or Pakistani background trying to get into the game, whether it be of say Korean, Japanese, Chinese, other variations as well. There is racism. It's not just... See, this is the thing. Racism is not just a black and white or black v white issue. There are other races around as well, and they need to be factored in to any sort of punishments or any sort of support program. You can't just do it for one race and not help anyone else, because that's unfair to everyone else who may be suffering even worse abuse. Yeah, a strong message from government would help give the clubs power and inclination needed, but at the end of the day, I've always said that financial sanctions are pretty lax at the moment. I mean, 15,000 euros to a club that is probably turning over 10-20 million a year is nothing. It's pocket change. So it's one of them ones that there needs some sort of uniform punishment may need to be done. So it's one of them ones where it's not it's not a simplistic issue. But at the same time, there does need to be some sort of, like I've said before, punish uniformly and punish in a draconian fashion. That is what I will always say in terms of racism, in terms of any sort of abuse, whether it be racism, homophobia, or otherwise. Punish uniformly, castigate uniformly, and castigate in a draconian fashion. I mean, at the end of the day, the government have taken a back seat, not getting on a political high horse. Just like last week, not getting on a political high horse, but the government have taken a back seat in a lot of things. Gus John has accused them of taking a back seat in terms of racism in football. Mate, they've taken a back seat in a whole hell of a lot of things. Just look at the financial system and the crap we're in right now, the mess we're in right now over in the UK. But it's a case of that. Football needs to get its act together in a number of ways. Racism being one of them, being one of the main ways. And like I said last week, with the FA having this whole celebration of 150 years and all that, yeah, I don't mind that. But at the end of the day, you've got basically you've got so much wrong in football, and the FA are just. You know, I didn't want to say it like this on the show last week, but the FA having their 150th year circle jerk and basically glad-handing each other and say, "Oh, congratulations, 150 years and all this." Apologies if I've offended anyone with the circle jerk analogy, but it's one of them ones. They're just glad-handing each other saying, "Oh, yes, we've got to 150 years. Yeah." When they really should be working that bit harder to eradicate racism from football, to eradicate any sort of prejudice or abuse from football. The FA needs to step its game up. They really do need to step its game up. The Premier League needs to step its game up. A lot of clubs need to step their game up. And at the end of the day, if the clubs don't step their game up, then the powers that be need to step their game up. They really do. And this is what needs to happen. And it needs to happen. It not only needs to happen, but it needs to happen now. It needs to happen. And if it doesn't happen right now, right this second, it needs to happen sharpish. Let's put it that way. So it's one of them ones. Millwall have done a lot in terms of eradicating racism in football in their community. I will say that. You can't blame every single Millwall fan for the actions of a moronic minority. But at the end of the day, no one should have to go through any sort of physical or verbal abuse whilst on the football pitch or anywhere, to be perfectly frank, whether it be work or anywhere else. We have some Skypers up in the house who want to jump in with their opinion as well. Mike Harniman, if you'd like to go first, and Umbreen Ali, I've seen what you've typed in the Skype chat. Would like you to articulate that after Mike as well. And Big T, welcome to the show, by the way. You can feel free to chime in after Umbreen as well. But Mike Harniman, have at it first and foremost, dude.
Yeah, basically, it's just discrimination against all of them, though. It's not just due to race. It's like sexuality as well. Because like you had Robbie Rogers come out as gay on, I think it was Friday or Saturday, just gone. He retired, I think he's 25 years old, just same age as me. He retired from professional football.
Yeah.
He was over in the States. He come over, he was at Leeds United for a while, come on loan to us, and then went back to Leeds and was released. And then it's just come out the weekend just gone that he's gay. And then I think he's basically retired due to the fact that he's in a male-dominated environment and he's scared of how people are going to react around him and around that sort of the fact he's come out as being gay. Well, he's open and he's fine about it.
Yeah, you're right. There are a lot of different variations of discrimination. We're not throwing out the homosexual thing. We might actually save that for next week as a talking point because there's quite a lot to be said about that. But did you have anything more to add about the racism issue?
I've said it all previously, really. It's kind of... There's just not a place for it in the game at all, and they've got to do so much to, to actually... I don't know what they can do, because they're trying to do things about it now. They're trying to make it, they're trying to make it as much as like I'm trying to think of what to say. As much as sort of kicked out as possible, if you understand what I mean. But they just can't do anything. They're trying their best, but they can't seem to find a way around it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the job of the powers that be. They need to find a way around it, and they need to find a way around it quickly. But I mean, there's been a couple of other interesting things said in the Skype chat. I mean, especially Umbreen Ali. Would you like to articulate what you said in the Skype chat? Because that's a very interesting point.
Yeah, do you know, before I mention that, I just also, picking up on what you said about how the government needs to make more of an exerted effort to prevent these kind of things from happening. Only a couple of days ago, Theresa May, the Home Secretary, she went on record now, or she said publicly, that our streets are more dangerous, British streets are more dangerous because of foreign criminals, because we are not, all this immigration issue that's going on, but it just kind of honed in on the fact that our streets are more dangerous because of foreigners. And if the government is sending out that kind of message, especially in a time of, dire financial straits, obviously this kind of racism, it's almost subliminal that this is the message that's being sent to the public, that it is about, foreigners, that this racism, they're going to be kind of, they may not want to admit to it, but it's this inherent feeling. And I was also saying on the Skype chat, slightly different to this, but it's discrimination in itself. For the first time ever in the UK, there was a case brought to court, and it was a British Indian man who was suing his solicitor's practice because he claimed that they were discriminating against him because of his caste, because of this huge caste system within the Indian culture. Yeah. So they were being derogatory and demeaning towards him because of his caste, so he claimed. Now, the case was thrown out, but it is historic in the sense that it's the first case of discrimination in that in that genre. And so my point was, whilst we have to deal with racism on a national scale or a global scale, actually, there's a different kind of feeling when you're getting discrimination from within your own people.
No, that is true. I mean, if anything, it kind of hurts even more, because you should be soldiers united in the same struggle, united by the same struggle, and united and striving to make sure that struggle is less of a struggle, but you're kind of sniping at each other. It's the old crabs in a barrel mentality, which as a black man myself, I know only too well about the whole crabs in a barrel mentality. And it's one of them ones where when you're sniping at your own people and being racist towards your own people, that's even worse than outsiders, because you know exactly how it feels and what it feels like when you're abused in that way. So you doing it is even worse. But the fact of the matter is, what you said there about Theresa May was quite an interesting point, because at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, if government is coming out and saying, oh yeah, it's because of the foreigners, it's a case of no, there would be crime here even by indigenous people. That's what Theresa May is failing to realise in her infinite idiocy. That's what she's failing to realise with her statements. You can't blame crime on just immigration or immigrants. At the end of the day, if you notice how these politicians only ever jump on a subject when it suits them. At the end of the day, for me, it's a case of it's giving people an easy excuse, an easy way out by saying, if they're seeing government saying, oh, blame it on immigration, blame it on foreign people, then obviously morons are going to come out and be like, oh, look, there's my excuse, ready-made excuse. And it's one of them, it's just perpetuating it. So the government are definitely taking a backseat. And when you've got politicians coming out, when you got bloody politicians coming out and saying what Theresa May said, it's even more moronic. And you wonder why this spreads to football. So, the whole thing is absolutely bloody stupid. The powers that be in football, most of them are morons. Most of them, if they had a brain between them, they'd be out playing with it. But it's the same with politicians as well. And at the end of the day, it's a case of we, the people, have to take a stand. We're the ones who are going to have to do something, whether it be voting with our feet, whether it be coming onto shows like this and other shows and articulating our opinions in articulating our opinions in a well constructed way. That's what we get. That's what we're gonna need to do. There's got to be a revolution that happens, and it's got to happen soon. So it's one of them ones. I mean, Big T, you wanted to jump in on this as well, because you mentioned a couple of interesting points about disability as well.
Yeah, I did, Liam, and hello to everybody. But basically, I mean, this is a personal experience from yours truly. I mean, I'm not afraid to admit this, but I've got a form of autism called Asperger's syndrome, and people seem to think that it's used as an excuse. Now, I'm not talking about racism and stuff. This is to do with disability, but the amount of people nowadays, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in college or university, who use it as an excuse to do whatever they want. It's like saying, I've got this, I can do that, and I can basically go out there and shoot somebody. It's not right. It's a form of bullying, because like James said in the chat, I quite rightly agree with what he was saying. Everybody is equal. Yes, you have prime ministers. Yes, you have people. You have upper class, middle class, and lower class. But at the end of the day, everybody is equal. You don't treat everybody differently. Whether you're black, whether you're white, it doesn't matter. You're still the same person. And people who think that it's okay to be racist need to take a long look in the mirror before they think about doing stuff like that. Because it's just, not only is it bad on you, it's bad on society. It's bad on your family and your friends. It's just like, oh, I've called him or whatever it is, and now I'm going to brag about it. Mate, it's not normal. It's mental. People who do that must be crazy. And I totally agree with what Umbreen was saying. I mean, sentiment exactly. I agree with what she was saying. It's to do with politics as well. And me personally, from my point of view, I don't think we should have got Conservative in, because to me personally, I think Labour were doing a good job making sure that none of this was happening and making sure that it wasn't seen as much. And yes, it needs to be highlighted, but the fact that this government aren't doing as much, they say they're going to do it, like you said, Liam, but they're not doing anything. They say things and they don't act it. We need a change in government. We need people to stand up for themselves, look in the mirror and say to themselves, you know what, I'm going to do something today to change the world, to change everybody else's life, including my own, because I'm not going to stand being racially abused, being bullied at work, or being, made to look like a fool, because it's just wrong. And the thing I'll say to end this is, at the end of the day, people who are racist or whatever, or disability or bullying, it's just not on. There really is something wrong in society nowadays when people are brought up to say things like that to anybody and everybody, because I'll tell you something, they need to take a long, hard look at themselves before they judge anybody else. And that's all I've got to say about that, really.
Spot on, Big T. It's one of them ones. I mean, James Leahy, did you want to add a little bit to that?
Yeah, everyone should be treated same, to be honest. It's not fair because Thomas has got a sign of disability. He should be treated different to everyone else. He's exactly the same as us. We're all human, aren't we?
Of course.
Exactly.
We're all part of the human family, and right now we're all part of the Pitstalk family. And we're all part of the Pitstalk family, not just for now, but for life. It's one of them ones. At the end of the day, we're all soldiers in the same struggle. We're all here for one goal: to enjoy football, to watch football, to talk football, to enjoy the game, without having to worry about morons running and ruining the game, without having to worry about morons being racist and abusive and ruining the game. It's one of them ones, man. We are. It's one of them ones. We are the people. It's one of them ones. We are. In theory, we are the game. Because no fans, no game.